This program brought to you by Harvey Norman. Celebrate that Christmas feeling. Frozen Fanta at Macca's. There's 30 flavours to score today for only $1. Hyundai, proud fan and official sponsor. And NAB, supporting football in Australia. NAB, more than money.
Look at that from Castro.
Oh, what a ball. Ninkovic. So, yes. With the volley. Oh, Jamie Young.
Probably fancies himself there, doesn't he? I think they're barking up the wrong tree.
How do you get a hold of all this information?
Krishna. Riera. Connor Payne. Oh.
Needs to go in a different direction.
More consistency with his quality.
He set the house on fire again.
Oh, what a goal that is.
So it's 4 for Melbourne victory.
It's Melbourne Derby weekend, and with rampant victory ready to rip into their rivals, we identify the men who could stop Muskie superstars. We'll hear from Roy O'Donovan as he prepares for his long-awaited return from suspension, discuss how 2 of the A-League's most informed players missed Socceroos selection, and the Raw head to Wellington in a match that could shape John Aloisi's coaching future. It's normally the busiest half hour in football. Tonight, it's only 15 minutes, so let's rip in. Welcome to A-League Express.
Yeah, great to have your company for the first time this season on A-League Express from beautiful NIB Stadium in Perth. Adam Peacock alongside Andy Harper. We can hear some samba beats in the distance over there, making you feel like you're kind of in Rio. It's the kind of temperature.
It's certainly warm enough, yeah.
Yeah, good to see you, Harps. We'll get into everything for this round of the A-League, but firstly, we're going to start where we're going to start tonight, and that's a big match between Perth Glory and Sydney FC. Tony Popovic against his good mate Steve Corica with the team news. It's a very good evening to Daniel Garb.
Adam, thank you very much. Yeah, the Glory women have just had a win over Sydney FC, so they're top of the table. The Glory men are top of the table as it stands. The Glory days might just be back inside this stadium, although their record against Sydney FC isn't flash. The Sky Blues have won the last 8 battles between the two. Can you believe it? But the Glory are top for now. Even so, though, there is no resting on your laurels under Tony Popovic. He has still made 2 changes to his team sheet for tonight's game, has Tony Popovic, and Joel Chianese goes out. He's a bit unlucky. Jake Brimmer comes in for him. Chianese's been in some pretty decent form. And one day, the Spanish import returns to the starting lineup as well for Brandon Wilson, who drops to the bench. For Sydney, just the one change from the team that took out the derby last weekend. Joop van der Linden limped off in that game. He misses out, and Alex Wilkinson returns as expected after that illness that forced him to miss the derby. Of course, both teams are celebrating this week the inclusion of key players in the Socceroos squad for the Asian Cup. Ryan Grant, who's also celebrating 10 years at Sydney FC, and Chris Economides, the young phenom at this football club. Will be great to see them go head-to-head tonight.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, Ryan Grant, 10 years to the day in which he played his first A-League game for Sydney FC, plays here tonight, and Harp's kickoff's been put back because there was 2 drinks breaks per half in the W League, so in about 40 minutes time at 6:16 local, 9:16 Eastern will be kickoff in that A-League game. But let's rip into all the matches across the weekend, highlighted by the Melbourne Derby, of course, on Saturday. Melbourne City, Melbourne victory, a heaving Amy Park. We're looking forward to that, and Harps, it's so tight between these two. Melbourne victory, Melbourne City over the journey. It's a fantastic rivalry, which of course is going to be have a little addition next year with the Western Melbourne group coming in. But you look at that, can't split them. One side, depending if they're out of form, in form or whatever, rises to the level of the other.
Sure, and City got the jump on victory at the start of the season in the first derby, but Melbourne victory by the length of the straight in front of Melbourne City in football terms at the moment. Luke Bratton in the press this week saying some team's going to cop it, and I'm sure they're hoping in the Sky Blues down in Melbourne that it's going to be this Friday or tomorrow night that happens. I can't quite see it. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Melbourne victory opened the shoulders on Melbourne City tomorrow night, because they've been really brewing. And one of the things that's really interested me about this Melbourne victory team in particular, I've got this sense that they've been playing really well and very attractive football, very effective football, but very clean football.
Yeah.
And I had this... got the guys at Fox Sports in the lab to go through under Kevin Muscat how clean this team has been since he's coached the team, and they're in remarkable shape. Not only are they winning on the pitch, they're winning fans off the pitch. They're setting new standards for their own football club. But this is the lowest cards and the lowest fouls conceded since Kevin Muscat's been in charge. And I think this is a very telling statistic because at the moment, Melbourne Victory are the complete package.
They're behaving as best they have over a long period of time, and it helps. It certainly helps when referees aren't getting on your case, and you can just play football. And Melbourne Victory is certainly doing that very well this season. Intrigued about the response from Terry Antonis, Thomas Dank, and indeed James Troisi after missing out on the Asian Cup. And didn't James have a word to say?
In my opinion, even with Azza injured, obviously I believe I should be there. We've been training, so I haven't seen the squad. I haven't had any contact from anyone, which is disappointing because I think I've been involved for quite a long time now. I feel I've done quite a lot for Australian football, so a bit of a phone call would have been nice. You know, like I said, I haven't seen the squad, but not just myself. I think there's a couple of boys in this team which unfortunately doesn't look like the squad is, you know, picked on merit and picked on performance, because not just myself, I think there's a couple other boys that should feel very, you know, hard done by.
Rate the honesty from James Troisi. Does it manifest itself into something out of the ordinary, though, on the football park in his next match in a derby?
It could do. I mean, he's been playing well. Whether he's been playing well enough to get into the Socceroos squad is a debatable point, and the jibe that the players haven't been picked on form, I think, is a contentious one. I don't know that I agree with it, although I do think Terry Antonis should be in that team. But how this translates into A-League action this weekend, well, you would like to think from a Melbourne Victory viewpoint, if they've got any more room for improvement, something like that is really going to spur one of their key players like James Troisi on, maybe Deng and maybe Antonis too.
You mentioned before about how calm they are in terms of discipline, but what struck me, especially last Friday night in that second half against Brisbane, was 4-2 and a calamitous first half from just about everyone on the park, how calm they were in terms of bullet feet, just chill out everyone. And the way that they're cutting through teams when they want to cut through teams is something to behold.
And you know what, Adam, as well, last week with that game against Brisbane, the two Brisbane goals, as well taken as they were in the end, should have been, the first one should have been a free kick for Victory, which ended up in the corner for Brisbane, and the second goal for Brisbane was not a free kick, in my opinion. And a team that's not as composed psychologically, that hasn't got their stuff together so mentally, would have combusted at that point, given what was at stake. But Melbourne Victory rode that wave, and then they, on the back of that mental foundation, are developing and playing this beautiful football. Great players in good nick. It's a pretty hard thing to stop.
Costa Barbarouses, he's been outstanding. His stat sheet reads perfectly for a player in his role. He burst on the scene at Brisbane playing primarily under Ange Postecoglou as a central striker. Is that why we're seeing something like this from him this season?
Well, I mean, they've got the mix just right there, and Costa's been one of the big beneficiaries. And also, and he's spoken about this and other players at Melbourne, when Keisuke Honda handed him that penalty at Marvel Stadium a couple of weeks ago, you get yourself going this year, Costa. And he says he's scored in four goals in consecutive games since. The point about Costa Barbarouses is an interesting one, because as a Brisbane player, when he scored all those goals, it was as a centre forward, you're quite right. Then we became used to him playing like Marco Rojas as one of these marauding wingers. And so when Toivonen didn't start this season and Kevin Muscat had changed that formation to a diamond midfield with two, with needing a centre forward and one off him, without Toivonen, we thought, oh, geez, the world's going to collapse. Who's going to play it? Well, Costa thought, I'm your man, because actually that's in my DNA. And he did it very, very well. And now with that leadership shown by Honda, he's picking up the goals, and again, very difficult to contain.
He's got Bart to contain him tomorrow, though. Bart Schenkenfeld, one of your favourite players.
Yes.
He's captured all our eyes this last two seasons. Just how physically unbelievable the guy is. Even if he gets himself a step out of position, he can make it up like no other.
He's like all the good defenders in the league, and we've got plenty of them. The first thing he does is make sure he wins that ball coming into the penalty area on or around the 6-yard box, the corner. He's always intercepting that first post. The second thing about Schenkenveld inside the penalty area, he scrambles as well as anyone in the competition. So if you think you've beaten him once, you haven't, because as you look up to shoot, guess who's throwing their body in front of the ball? It's Bart. But the most impressive part of his game, and I think the most difficult thing, is getting the ball in behind him effectively so that you can outrun him, and he doesn't get him into a position where he's not fast enough to recover the ground. We haven't actually seen that yet. So against the speed of the Melbourne Victory attack and transition, it'll be a big test for Bart.
Bart this week spoke of Luke Bratton, and we asked him, who's the guy that leads, it gets everyone together in the Melbourne City dressing room. And I was surprised that the answer was Luke Bratton, but it was. Do you see that as well? Do you see that as part of his role, or is it more a footballing role and coming up with good stuff on a page like this?
It's a really interesting thing about Luke, and it's not something that's been readily obvious to me. Massive fan of Bratton's, as I am. And think to the start of the season when he was actually in the El Tuna category, in the Bruno Fornaroli category. That is, we don't need you for the time being until you apparently smarten yourself up. Well, Luke's evidently done that, certainly in the eyes of the coach. He's a fantastic player, and he's going to have to play fantastically tomorrow to steer this team without Fornaroli again. That one lingers and festers, and it's frustrating because we need to be watching those players in the league, not doing cutaways to the grandstand watching him suck on his mate.
Hey, I'm going to ask him if he can play for our threes team next year. What's it run? Bruno, come along. Tip for that one?
I think Melbourne victory.
Fair enough. Let's get to the match that takes place just before that. Wellington and Brisbane. Contrast between these two is stark. Wellington have really got it together, and well done to them. They're on a bit of a roll. They're in the top 6, and Brisbane just can't get things going. What have you made of Wellington these last 2 weeks?
Well, they're well organised and they're responding really well to Mark Rudin, and congratulations to him, rookie coach in the A-League, with a team that has not been the easy beats in the competition, but they've really not threatened for the last couple of years apart from sporadically. Well, with this front line of Krishna in particular, but Sarpreet Singh feeding him and 2 or 3 others, they're a very dangerous team now to defend against. I don't think Brisbane are going to defend as badly as this, and Brisbane, I think, will enjoy being on the road. They need to get clear their heads. There is a bit of pressure building on that team and on that coach.
Need a holiday, yeah.
And I think playing 3 games away from home might actually provide the break that they need. And Wellington, it's going to be a good environment there, a great springboard for John Aloisi's team.
Yeah, because they need it. Because last season it was the injury-interrupted pre-season that cruelled their early stages of the campaign. Can't come up with this one this year.
I think in time, Mike Bosnich has called for the kids at Brisbane Roar. And I think what we've seen with Johnny Aloisi seems to be, he's brought a few kids through over his time as a Melbourne Heart coach and then in Brisbane, but there hasn't been a gung-ho approach to actually just throwing the kids in there en masse. He's got a couple of good ones. Wenzel Halls comes to mind in particular.
But he's out of the squad this week.
Well,
didn't fly.
There you go. So maybe he's sick or injured. But he's got to freshen things up. There are too many players in that team who've become a little bit a part of the problem and too easily played around. And last week, I'm going to finger Thomas Christensen. He's been a great player for the team, but I thought last week he was just too easy for the Victory players to get around. They got to snap that. They've got to be way more competitive in their immediate vicinity and provide a foundation where they can get this champion club back up the table.
Tip for that one?
I think a draw away from home for Brisbane. Home for Wellington, obviously.
We're looking forward to Sunday as well. It's the F3 Derby. We've got the Melbourne Derby on Saturday, the F3 Derby, and this gentleman is back playing football for Newcastle. Yeah, Roy's back after going all Kung Fu Panda in the grand final on Lawrence Thomas. He served his suspension and, well, we think he's going to make a difference just on evidence of this. Do you reckon he's going to prove the immediate spark that Newcastle are just missing at the moment?
Yeah, I happen to think so. He's a fantastic player, good goal scorer, and they're missing someone to bang the ball away. Their lead-up play has been excellent. I think the fascinating thing about Roy's return is going to be whether his mind is full of, is an aggrieved one. That is, I've been hard done by and was wrongly judged by the panel to have been to have committed such a heinous crime. Or is his mentality, you know what, whatever happened, happened. I actually own my football club. I've spent a lot of time out of this team, some with injury, not his fault, a couple of disciplinary issues as well, which has meant he hasn't been able to serve the football club. And I would like to hope that that's his mentality, busting through the gate to serve his football club and his fans.
Yeah, just that little ingredient that perhaps Newcastle are missing at the moment, because there's Vargas and Petrados to feed someone like Roy O'Donovan. This is he speaking this week.
I really can't wait. We were robbed of Vargas last year for so long. It was such an unfortunate injury. So it'd be great to be lining up alongside him again. Dimmy has been great this season. It just, probably hasn't had the the support network around him that he had early last year. Hopefully I can help that. But by and large, we've been playing pretty well, passing the ball really well, creating chances, and I hope I'm the last piece in the puzzle, but we'll see.
Last season, they dominated the F3 derby. Not on this page, apart from the top stat. Everything else was pretty much in favour of Central Coast, apart from the fact that Newcastle won 5-1, 2-0, 8-2. Nothing much went wrong for Central Coast.
They dominated and got hurt 16 times on the break, Adam.
Oh, my goodness. Poor old Central Coast. What do we think?
That wasn't a happy season.
We've got another graphic here to show. And I hate the term losers, but we couldn't come up with another word to explain this. We couldn't use non-winners because you might be drawing a game. But in the A-League history, have a look at this list. And poor old Andrew Houle and Jake McGing are on this. Losing streaks for A-League players. And Andrew Houle must be just pig sick of going to football and walking off and losing.
I mean, what do you say? You're an elite athlete, full-time professional elite athletes come through the system. A key part of your DNA is your desire to win, your competitive spirit, your absolute sheer, unabashed drive to make sure that you're better than your opponent. And to have your name next to a stat like that would be terrible for anyone to have to deal with. One wonders if it's going to be enough to push the Mariners to some sort of height tomorrow, because they're in a state at the moment.
Yeah, and they had Manchester United poach one of their men behind the scenes in Mike Phelan as well through the week to work back with the Manchester United first team. Tip for that one quickly?
The Jets.
The Jets. Let's get to the other game this weekend. Well, it's not this weekend. It's actually on Boxing Day. So Adelaide United and Western Sydney get to chill out and enjoy Christmas Day, but look ahead to what we're about to see. Craig Goodwin, speaking of responses, surprised that he didn't make it. It was between he and Economides.
Yeah, not overly. I mean, I'm disappointed for Craig because it would have been a great reward for him. He's played well. His form has dropped slightly over the last couple of weeks, and I'm pretty confident in saying if he did get picked, he wouldn't have let anyone down. But there's only so many numbers you can select, and Graham Arnold opted to leave him out, and his is one of the least contentious ones when you consider the absence of Terry Antonis. But he does have a big point to prove, Craig Goodwin. His finishing has just gone off the ball in the last couple of weeks, and maybe...
is he tailed off a little off the... I mean, FFA Cup's pretty hard to top.
Yeah, and he scored some crackers. But I said in the call last week, you remember that game away to Central Coast, and everything that Craig was touching was going in the goal, even if he didn't particularly mean it. He had a shot for goal, ended up a cross, and Stamatolopoulos scored. So he was in this, everything, it was in the Midas period for Craig Goodwin, and he's lost that halo effect in the last couple of weeks, and maybe that's cost him an Asian Cup squad. Maybe he's a little bit further down the pecking order anyway, but he's certainly good enough and hopefully primed to do something for the home team on Boxing Day.
Bruce Kamau was a huge part of Adelaide's success when they won the grand final, scored in the grand final. What have you made of Bruce's career now at Western Sydney Wanderers and finding his feet at a new club since that day, since the grand final?
Do you know, most times I watch Bruce, I get absolutely excited about what he can become as a footballer. And then for some reason or other, he drops off or he doesn't get selected, and then we're left wondering again. Then he bursts back on and has a match-dominating performance. I think out at Mudgee, he was in the opening 25 minutes in the excursion at Mudgee against the Wanderers. He was just blistering. In fact, he totally destroyed the Western Sydney Wanderers, Brisbane rather, and they should have been clear playing for the Wanderers, that is. So my point about Bruce is I still find him incredibly exciting to play, but my request to him on behalf of himself is to get the consistency in, because he's going to be hard to stop if he becomes a consistent performer.
Just one on Wanderers quickly. You wonder how Marcus Babbel went this week, because he must be getting to the point where he's a little bit over going in and saying, well, see what happened on the weekend for parts of that match in the derby before Janjetovic lost his head a little bit. It's there. Do that.
Yeah.
Do that. And it's obviously a bit more intrinsic than that, but it's not far off for one.
No, I think they've been making good progress. I thought they were looking pretty bare-boned. Certainly the first half